Republicans in Texas have rolled out a spate of new election bills taking particular aim at early voting after Democrats enthusiastically embraced the practice last year. There are now more than 24 GOP-sponsored election bills under consideration. Republicans have proposed asking mail voters to send in photocopies of their driver's license and adding civil penalties to election officials who don't purge voter rolls fast enough. There's broad interest in these bills from the party and a mandate from the state's Republican Governor Greg Abbott as well.
We must pass laws to prevent election officials from jeopardizing the election process. We also must ensure transparency in the polls.
Now, many of these bills target early voting, and in particular, early voting in Harris County, where creative officials deployed drive-through early voting to keep things socially distanced and overnight early voting to make it easier for shift workers to cast a ballot. Now, Republicans have proposed barring counties from allowing voting in tents or garages that would effectively end drive-through voting, and limiting early voting hours to stop those overnight ballots. Some proposals standardize early voting hours across the state. That means that Loving County, Texas, with a population of around 200 people, would have the same early voting hours of operation, 7 to 7, as Harris County, home to Houston and 4.7 million people. The proposals would limit options in urban areas where Democrats typically live. I asked lawmakers why this is such a priority now, and here's what the chairman of the Senate State Affairs Committee told me.
So Texas has been working on election integrity for a while. So this was already in process. But then the 2020 election, was so in the national spotlight, and so many people have questions, so many people have concerns. I would say that has raised the profile of the issue.
Now, let's be clear. There was no widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election. And that concern Senator Hughes refers to was largely drummed up by former President Donald Trump, whose stolen election claim convinced many voters that voter fraud exists, despite the lack of evidence. Now, Hughes told me he doesn't even know if the presidential election was stolen or not, even though he was elected in 2020 as well. Texas is not alone. It's one of 43 states considering hundreds of restrictive voting bills across the country, and many of the restrictions are really similar. Georgia is also considering standardizing early voting hours across the state, something that would have a similar effect on those urban areas where Democrats vote. Now, it's important to note that voting restrictions like these disproportionately impact voters of color. Voting rights advocates say Texas, which saw record turnout in 2020, should be doubling down to make it easier to vote, not more restrictions that would roll back some of these innovations that help turn voters out.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.